Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, Ladan.
IndieBio, the world's leading biotech accelerator. Okay, cool. Yeah, so you guys invest in biotech, and this includes neurotech as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about your IndieBio and what you do? Especially interested in what you guys look for also.
Yeah, so we're a biotech accelerator, like I was just saying. And what that means is we want to be a very early seed check, and we want to be the first real professional money into a company. And in doing so, the idea is we actually are able to help inflect the company to create an incredible amount of value. And so the way we do that is a 4.5-month program where all the companies kind of live, work, and breathe together. When I say live, it's just because everyone's basically living in the laboratory the whole time. We help them with their business milestones as well as their scientific milestones in order to be able to have the companies go raise $3 to $5 million at generally an 8 to 10 pre-money valuation when they graduate from the accelerator. And that's really hard work. It also requires a large syndicate of investors and an entire community of mentors and everyone that comes together to help on the companies. And IndieBio is famous for launching Memphis Meats, Gelator, Claro Foods, basically a bunch of the food companies that are doing the future of proteins or alternative proteins. We've also done a bunch of therapeutics companies that are platform-based solutions to solve for human health. What I like to say is we invest in early scientists and help them solve problems around human and planetary health. That's kind of what we do. And we give $250,000 of funding to the companies, and we take roughly about 12% of equity from the company in exchange. So we've launched 116 companies so far. 70% of our companies raise money after graduating, and collectively they're valued at about $2.3 billion today off of about $30 million invested over the last 5 years. We're increasing that investing pace now that we have a model that we know works and a team that can deliver.
Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff. And so basically you're valuing each company at about $2 million. And these are very early stage people, right? Like this isn't necessarily that they've even made money. They just come in with an idea, right?
We absolutely look at paper-based companies, i.e. ideas on a sheet of paper. I mean, Synthex, one of our most promising therapeutics companies, was just a postulate. Same with several others that have gone on to be worth several $100 million. I'm not afraid of scientific risk. The thing that I'm worried about is not being able to find scientists thinking big enough. Luckily, when I say big enough, I mean the amount of impact that an idea can have, and then positioning a business around that. A lot of scientists are used to creating a technological or a improvement on something, but that's where it really works well is working with me. I'm able to say, okay, there's an incredible technological innovation, but what's the best way to set up a business to maximize the impact of the invention and also maximize the amount of value created by that invention, i.e. valuation of a company in terms of revenues and multiple.
That's pretty cool stuff. So how is this different than, you guys are based in San Francisco, and how is this different than a lot of the stuff that goes on over there, which is more like websites and programming software stuff? And I'm a bit cynical with it, like, hey, it's Facebook for dogs, because science requires much more knowledge and bigger background compared to, like a Facebook for dogs.
Yeah, it's harder. The pool of investors is smaller. The pool of people you could fund is smaller, but the market sizes, the things that you could change are just titanic. And so that's why I got attracted to it, right? Because I'm a product guy. I did my own startup. It was a fitness app. I built products and designed the Samsung Galaxy Curve, IDEO. And then prior to that, my schooling's in genetic engineering. So I could have kind of chosen whichever way I want to go in venture capital. But genetic engineering combined with sort of the speed and power of the technology that's coming online today and IT, I think is creating a revolutionary technology, one that's going to power an entirely new class of companies that revolutionize consumer and enterprise. And so that's the way I'm looking at the world. And because of that lens, I was the first to be able to do things like Memphis Meats, a stem cell company working on engineering mesenchymal cow cells to make a burger is just not something a traditional pharma therapeutics firm is going to fund. But the way I look at the world is through the lens of efficiency, entropy, and biology. And you can really create massive market value by solving for climate change and things like that. I'm fighting capitalism with better capitalism is my way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that's the way you have to do it, because nonprofits or other kind of structures, they're just not self-sustaining, and they're not going to gain nearly as much momentum as something capitalistic and where you can get 1,000 people working together actively 40 hours a week. So I completely agree with you on that. Where does neurotechnology fit into all this?
So neurotech is like, oh man, I always say this. I'm like, I take more risk. My job is to take more risk than anyone else in the world, in the Valley included. And when I talk about spectrums of risk taking in terms of investing, neurotech is out in the far end. Like, it is the riskiest of all the risky you can do. I mean, it's so hard that Pfizer abandoned all their Alzheimer's research. Pfizer just pulled up stakes and walked away. There's just not many funds working on it. My very first investment, actually, kind of funny, even before I started IndieBio, was a neurotech company, a company called Vivid Vision. And they use virtual reality to cure lazy eye and improve vision in other ways. And so, that, so interesting. My sister is a leading cornea specialist, eye surgeon. And I texted her, I was like, hey, what do you think? She's like, the brain's not really, the premise is the brain would have to be neuroplastic in order for this to work. And I'm like, I think the brain is more neuroplastic than anyone thinks. And so I went against my sister's, against medical authority to make an investment in Vivid Vision. And they're now a global presence, making well over $1 million a year and growing fast. So I think neurotech, at the same time, doing anything harder than that, much harder than that, like invested in a suicide or treatment-resistant depression company using RTMS. And that's just, and it's, you could see the actual results from the clinical trials that they've run. It's called Neurocore, by the way. Maron, the CEO, he's smartly focused on adolescent suicide as an indication, but it's just hard to get traction around it. People don't want to believe they're depressed. There's a natural hesitancy to even use the product to begin with. So then when you look out at this other spectrum and the non-clinical aspect of it, that represents just craziness. So what I'm talking about, of course, is neurocognitive enhancement through brain-machine interfaces. Like, you got Elon Musk's Neuralink, and then what was Brian Johnson's again called? I forget.
Colonel.
Thank you, Colonel. So you got those, and here's the fun. While it is an amazing premise that you can do this kind of stuff, if you're going to do something invasive, it is such a high bar to say, okay, we're going to do something invasive. It's a voluntary procedure. If something goes wrong, you're basically a vegetable. But if something goes right, you're going to be able to be smarter. It's just, that bar is just so high for safety and all this kind of stuff. And it's not safety about just the procedure and you can breathe a sigh of relief. It's safety over the long run and an implantable. That being said, I've seen a raft of vagal nerve stimulators and things like that come out that we didn't invest in some of them, but I know there's a couple that are moving towards market that have very strong clinical data. So brain machine interface means a lot of things. Neurotech means a lot of things, and I'm very interested in funding all of the cutting edge science to translate. It's just a matter of finding the right team, the right product, and the right indication.
Yeah, there's huge potential, but also huge downside. So you're looking at more early stage companies. Like, what kind of people are you looking at, or what kind of groups are you looking at? And then what catches your eye? What are you looking for too?
Yeah, looking for disease mitigation a lot. I think that's an important one. I'm looking for anything that solves a problem that is currently intractable. If it's improving on something, I think, again, it's hard, right? Like texting with your thoughts, that barrier is super duper high. It took years and years for voice to text to even work where it's got most of your words correct. And it still doesn't have mainstream adoption, right? We still type with our fingers mostly. So That's kind of stuff that, okay, interesting. And I've seen a lot of that. But where it does get more interesting is in locked in syndrome, right? Where people can't communicate in any other way. There might be a tiny, tiny market there, but if you could perfect it there, then you can go on and expand out to speech to or thought to text and things like that, and communication in different ways, controlling computers. But you have a willing market that they have a lot lower bar because their problems are a lot higher. So generally, that's kind of what I'm looking for. If there are companies that are looking at non-invasive cognitive enhancement that is demonstrable, I think that could be interesting. We funded a company called Troost that is a algorithm that can deconvolute EEG in a way that amplifies hidden signal in the actual signal that they capture. So you don't have to rerun the EEG and get to a much finer resolution. And so that creates all sorts of potential biomarkers for different things, including consumer behavior, right? You can measure someone's thoughts about how they react to products and things like that. So that's what I'm looking for. Like, how do you build milestone-based businesses that can interface people with machines to get more quantification of a person's thoughts and feelings out, eventually all leading to, right, the holy grail of everything, that you could really harness the power of unlimited, say, memory, cloud memory that I could be privy to, right? I don't have to, the ultimate phone in your pocket, right? But it's like a phone in your head sort of thing. I don't know what that society looks like. It certainly doesn't look like our society today. I know that society is still decades away at the very minimum.
So is that your dream kind of? Is that like your ideal utopia for this? That like for me, it's kind of more like learning really fast, the Matrix style, like, oh, I know Kung Fu, but
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
you?
no, I mean, but it's not going to be that, right? Like, because if everything, like, it's amazing, right? Like, the stay at home is like, well, you could literally take this time to learn anything you want in the world because all the world's knowledge is online. I could go to YouTube and literally learn anything, including surgeries. Like, there's literally almost nothing you can't learn right now at your fingertips. You can read all the world's classics. Like, the just knowledge database is incredible, yet everyone's not walking around being a super genius. I think there's a physical process by which learning and memory takes place in your brain. And I think to know Kung Fu, like Neo, while, okay, let's just say everyone can do that. Well, now what? Now, what does it mean to Kung Fu? Right? Is to know Kung Fu the ability to defend yourself in a fight, or is it to put 10 years of hard work into a process? And I think that's why I say reshape society, because what are people going to actually use it for? Probably like talking to each other, like like using face recognition to see someone across the street and know everything about them. Like, how does that change how someone lives? And I think that's the more profound stuff. Everyone knowing everything doesn't really mean much to me, because quote unquote, everyone knows everything right now if they cared to look.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess you'd be that insufferable person that knows everything all the time, and you literally just everything because you have the smartphone in your pocket, but it's hooked up to your brain or whatever. So yeah, I want to talk about the program. What do you guys do? I mean, obviously you offer $250,000. You were saying like they're on top of each other. Everybody's like bunking together, or just like sounds very smelly. But what else does IndieBio offer to people wanting to build a company?
Yeah, so they're not actually living together, but they're in the lab a lot. We have a lab and an office space, and everyone basically is together for 4.5 months, where we bring in huge amounts of mentors, investors, and basically all the Sand Hill Road venture capitalists walk through the halls to check out the companies. All the major corporations in the world, all the multinationals come by to check out the company. So it's definitely an intense time, and they're working super hard to de-risk their company, oftentimes doing a year's worth of work in 4.5 months. So that culminates in a demo day where 800 people come to a physical location, the Opera House in San Francisco, and watch the teams pitch. And that's when 70% of our companies go raise money. But everyone raises money and goes off to the races and goes and tries to change the world in some significant way. They have access to the lab, and I think that's a critical component, because for $250,000, you don't have to go buy $2 million worth of equipment. All that equipment's right there for you.
Yeah, that's a huge side advantage because lab space, putting that together is very, very expensive. I mean, to put together small size lab for half a dozen people could be $100,000. So it's surprisingly expensive because you also have to have very qualified people handling a lot of this stuff, fume hoods and chemical trays and whatever. So it can't be done by just some people you can pick up off the street. Yeah. So okay, so how many people go through this program and what kind of track record? I mean, you said it's 4.5 months. Do you do this yearly or how often do you do this?
Yeah, every 6 months. We
Every six
fund
months.
up to 15 companies, between 22 really, and 30 a year. We have a location in New York as well for all East Coasters, and they do the same. So we're graduating roughly 60 companies a year. The track record, like I said, was 70% of our companies, 7 out of 10 raise money. 83% of the 116 companies we've ever funded are still alive. And together they're worth about $2.3 billion. So it's been a pretty incredible run for us.
Yeah, that's very incredible. And so what's kind of the makeup of the companies? I mean, a lot of times, especially for neurotech or biology in general, I mean, there's so much to learn. You could potentially learn that how to do something like that even at 16 years old. But this is something that is multidisciplinary. You might need a decade in a lab to really get all the nuances down. So are the people that go through this mostly older, like professors, established, white beard kind of people? Or what would you say most of the company founders look like?
Yeah, they're all over the place. I mean, from white beards to 18-year-olds. But we tend to fund, we have to have at least one PhD on the team. We never fund sole founders. And we generally want to be the first check. Although if there are other investors, I can talk to them and see about them, how we make sure we make the deal work. I'm very proud of the fact that 43 or 48%, I think it's 43% of all the companies, of all the co-founders we fund are female. It's something we track because we see that the performance is better because of it. So yeah, we're not stuck to a region. We've funded companies from all over the world. Again, we've seen a lot of really amazing outcomes from teams out of South America, Latin America, India, and more.
Okay. And then how big is a team usually?
Generally 2 to 5. Above 5 in the 4-month program becomes unwieldy. The mean probably at like 2.8 or something like that.
Okay. And then why don't you do solo founders?
Because there's too much to do. I think there's 2 reasons. One, there's too much to do for one person. To be honest, you can't de-risk a company to the level we're trying to de-risk them to within 4.5 months with one person. You got to write pitch deck. You got to raise money. You got to build a business. Get letters of intent. You got to make all the science work. There's zero chance of that. It's already for 2 people they're going to burn out on demo day. So physically you can't do it. Mentally you can't do it. And then if you can't convince someone else to join you, then you're probably not going to be able to raise money one day. So your first job as a founder is to convince someone to join you, because then you can potentially convince other people to join you.
That's interesting. I was also part of a business plan pitch competition. And my idea, I was the sole founder. And the guy's also like, like this can be also a sign that that person's egotistical or just like controlling or something like that. It can be a red flag for that kind of stuff.
Totally.
But I like to think I'm not. I don't know.
You are, otherwise you wouldn't have reached out. But I mean, but yeah, that is the actual real worry, right? To build a startup requires a lot of perseverance, a lot of strength, and a lot of collaboration and cooperation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But then why do you actually guys do a sprint? Why do you do a 4.5 month just intensive, crazy thing versus, I don't know, maybe a year or something? I mean, you said you do a year's worth of work in 4.5 months. Why not do a year's worth of work in 1 year?
Because why waste 8 months of your life? Work expands to fill the volume of time, which is why people will spend 5 years working on an idea only to find it fails when they could have found out, if they were intent about it and had good endpoints, that it didn't work in 4.5 months, or it did work in 4.5 months and they should dedicate their life to it. Instead, they kind of waffle around for a while, right? I think that's, like I say it on the first day of every cohort, I'm here to accelerate your success and your failure.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Well, Arvind, this has been excellent. I've really enjoyed this. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to mention?
No, thanks so much. I mean, I think what you're doing is really important, which is why I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you. I think it's not for all the PhDs out there and all the scientists sitting on some idea that they're like, oh man, I think this could work, but no one's willing to take us seriously. Give me a call. I'll take you seriously. It's a really important area, and I think it's just beginning. I remember feeling like this when I started funding alternative foods, alternative proteins, and now that has absolutely exploded. And I think neurotech is next.
Yeah, very well could be. And I mean, that is kind of the sad thing. I mean, so many, like you said, so many PhD students are working on really cool technologies and it could be marketable, but they don't know. But that paycheck, that steady paycheck from an industry company is just so much more attractive. And people are just tired of being a starving student for the last decade or whatever, or more, who knows. And so they're just like, well, I just want to eat. I just want like a car with 4 wheels this time instead of the whatever else you had before. So I think that money that you're offering, the $250K, I think that's a really good way to kind of hedge the bet and be like, okay, well, this guy believes in me enough to do that. Then you can really go after that, swing for the fences, but at the same time, it's not completely unsafe and you're not going to be eating ramen for a few more years. You can actually eat meat. So I think it's really cool. And I haven't really seen something like this. So yeah, thanks for running this. This is really cool.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, if you guys need anything, you could find me on Twitter, Arvind Gupta. You could find me on Instagram. There's a lot of places to find me.
Excellent. Well,
Thanks, man.
thank you so much.
Yep.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.